So summary, these are the sorts of UX or design jobs you can possibly get, and these are kind of the parts of the design phase that those go in. There's a lot of different kinds of jobs. There's a bunch of appendices. Again, the slides will be online. There's just a bunch of links that people have contributed over the years. There's a whole slide about product manager or PM jobs and stuff. And yeah, so this is the history. I've given this talk many times over the past three years or so. So in the remaining time I have, we are at 9 o'clock. In the remaining time I have, I'm happy to take questions and open it up for Q&A and stuff, and I can repeat the questions up here. So if you have questions, let's do it now. Yeah, so that's a good question. The question in the back is, are we not supposed to include the final product? Or are we supposed to just include the case study? Well, the final product is the final part of your case study, right? So the final product is in there, right? But it's just the last part, right? I mean, you should probably describe it up front. You should probably summarize it up front, right? And on your web page, the preview of every case study, you could have the final product shown. I think that's a cool idea. That, you know, if you have a little YouTube video or a little demo, the teaser trailer could be the final product, but you want to have the full thing too. Yeah, so it's not an either or. Yeah, you do have your final product, but it's part of the case study. And we have one up here. Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was about, you know, you're really observant in that especially the class projects is that like they're usually team projects, right? Class projects and also internship projects. All these projects are team projects for the most part, right? Except if you're doing something totally by yourself. And the question was, you know, are you able to write up the whole case study because you didn't do personally probably all of it, right? And I would say the answer is yes, but you should talk about the parts you focused on, right? So you could say, you know, on David's class project here, let's see, computers. On the class project, it's actually interesting because I didn't get to show both of them, but both David and Rajiv, who are my two TAs for this one class, they worked on this class project together for another class. They worked on the same team project, right? Same class project with the third member, but they wrote up their own individual case studies on it, and they were both able to get jobs out of it. And I would say what happens is that you want to be honest up front. You want to say that the project was a team project. We had a team of 3, blah, blah, blah. And my role specifically was to focus on the whatever part. But I think it's okay to present the whole thing. And usually, you know, on these class projects, you know, I think if they work well, everyone is involved in more of the parts, right? You might be involved more than another, but it's not that like for a class project, it's not like you just sat there for 9 weeks and then you just did the 10th week's work, right? You are involved in all the work. It's just you're not as heavily involved. But I think that's fine. I mean, the research equivalent of this, right, the equivalent in academic research, as you've seen in reading these papers, is that a research paper has a few authors, right, the team project. And obviously not every author worked on every single part of the paper, but they're all kind of authors on the paper. So I think that's a great question. But you should be honest and say this was a team project and such. It's a great question. Yeah, so the question was, what's the best way to learn these web frameworks like Angular or Vue or React for building the web applications or mobile applications? It's a great question. I think, you know, a good starting point is the official tutorial pages on their web pages. It's often hard to find good resources because there are so many of these resources and it's really confusing. I would say that the official ones from their web page is probably the best starting point because they, you know, the organizations that maintain these frameworks they have an incentive to make their documentation good. And beyond that, I would even look into some paid courses that are, you know, there are these courses online that are, you know, $10 a month or whatever subscribed to. You know, the issue with these web framework things that there's so much information out there and it's a very varying quality. So it's actually really hard to find the best thing for you. I would just look for reviews or just start with the official ones and stuff. But it is a challenge. Yeah, it is a challenge. But, you know, many things you can do without doing the coding part. But yeah, that's a good question. Do we have one in the middle there somewhere? Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, I'm about to sneeze. So, so the question was, you know, many of these are design jobs, you know, cognitive science is a major, you know, how did that look in terms of those jobs? So practically what happens, you know, I think it's the best major here for it. So, you know, you're here now. So I think that cognitive science is the best major for it because we have this HCI specialization, right? So that your degree says cognitive science with an HCI specialization. We do have a design minor. That's at UCSD now, so you should look into that so that there is a minor in design, so you can have a cognitive science major and a design minor, which I think is kind of easy to get because a lot of those courses you're already taking for CogSci. So there's a design minor. That said, though, you're absolutely right. A lot of these job titles are design, but there aren't. If you ever actually think about it, like not many undergraduates have an undergraduate degree in design, right? Like it's very hard for me to name an undergraduate student with an undergraduate degree in design because those don't actually exist, right? They might exist at like these art schools, right? These kind of art schools might have a bachelor's in design or something, but those are actually not the people doing these. This is why the job titles are confusing, right? The people who go to these art schools or design schools, they might become visual designers or graphic designers, but they are not actually the one doing most of these jobs. So I guess a more general form of your question is, what majors do people do that do these jobs? Here, I think cognitive science is the most common one. Typically, another one would be computer science, right? So people with computer science degrees who specialize in HCI or user interfaces would do some of these jobs. People who do this user research, product manager thing, many people come from a social sciences background, right? So people majoring in anthropology, sociology, psychology is another common one. So another common one up here is psychology. So, CogSci is pretty adjacent. So yeah, so I wouldn't be concerned that your degree doesn't say design, but your CogSci degree will have a HCI design specialization if you major in that, which you can put on your resume. And also there's a design minor as well. So that's a good question. Yeah. I think this Figma tool is actually really promising. So Figma is it's actually not that new, but it's really popular. So Figma is basically like Google Slides, but specialized for people who do UI design. It's really good. We use it for our classes, and it's pretty easy to learn, and it basically lets you make. Let me see if I can just demo it. This without crashing. See if I'm even logged in. It basically lets you make, I'll show you right now. It basically is a canvas that lets you make mock-ups of user interfaces without writing code. And you can actually do some interactions as well. So yeah, this example. This is actually from my class. So in our class, we actually use Figma for everything, and we have the students and the teams. They just turn in everything in the system itself. It's really nice. And where's my stuff? And notes for next. Okay, here's an example. So it's a web-based tool. It's a collaborative tool. Anyone can go into it. The internet here is a little slow. But yeah, I would start with Figma. But I think that the more general thing is that I would start with maybe taking classes here that would do this. Because this is a similar question as the one you asked about the web programming. Like, I wouldn't necessarily start with a tool. I would start with like the project idea, right? But I think Figma is a pretty standard tool for doing this. So let me zoom in here. So with a tool like Figma, you can basically create, it's like Adobe Illustrator and such, but you can basically create these just templates and diagrams and stuff and things. And you can also create these UI elements and stuff to lay these things out. Let me just we'll give you more examples and stuff there. But other questions while I dig up more examples? Yeah, so what should the diversity of projects? Yeah, so I would say, my TA Rajiv actually showed this. I would say just show a few projects, right? So this is a quality over quantity thing. So basically, because people are only going to be able to look at 2 or 3 projects, just show your 2 or 3 best projects, because these case studies are pretty involved, right? Like, you're not going to have 20 of them. So show 2 or 3 and have them written up really well. So imagine these are 2 or 3, essay length things. And where are the components? Oh, here we go. So I think that, the more realistic the project, the better. So this is like Apple Music, right? So this is kind of recreating the Apple Music UI in this Figma tool. And you can just imagine having icons and little buttons and stuff. So you're able to make these sorts of app screens. And there's no code here. And it's really just kind of making prototypes of screens. Yeah, I would say don't worry too much about optimizing for the specific companies. Again, this whole slide about doesn't really matter what you make, it's really that you made it well. So if you have 2 or 3 case studies that are written up really well, maybe 1 class project, maybe 1 side project, 1 internship project, the most important thing is these things are written up well, right? And that's non-trivial to do. I wouldn't worry about the domain too much, especially if you're applying for these general sorts of undergraduate jobs. Yeah, I don't think so. The question is about, parents or, other relatives. And so, I mean, one example is like if your parents are working for a certain company or they run their own business or whatever, and you're helping them and stuff, I think that's fine. Like, I think that's perfectly fine. I mean, like, when you put it in your case study, you're probably not going to say this is for my parents. You can say this is for a, like, I don't know, I'm just making this up. Like, so your parents are running a bakery or like, I don't know, a hardware store or something in your town, and you're helping them with their website or helping with something. I mean, your case study is going to be, here's a local hardware store that has these needs, and like, they need to build a better inventory system for their customers, or like the local bakery needs to like work with DoorDash or whatever, and we need to, figure out a better way for them to do it. Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. I mean, you just won't say this is like for my parents, but I think that's perfectly okay. I mean, as long as your parents are okay with it. But this is, again, this whole thing with like, I don't think there is a stigma. I think you should look for those things because, the fact of the matter is a lot of our early jobs, right? I mean, think about, maybe if you're in high school or something and your parents help connect you with their friends to, do a babysitting job or a tutoring job and stuff. A lot of those things came out because of our parents, and that's fine, right? And then you use those as experience and more. So like, I wouldn't necessarily worry about that. Yeah, I mean, like basically anything goes.
Is it on your webpage?
Yeah, I do. I have office hours like every week. Yeah, it's just there's like a Google Calendar. If you look at my webpage, just look at office hours. There's a Google Calendar. So whenever I'm there. Yeah.
Emailing you be more efficient, or would
Just go to the office hours. If you email me, I'll just send you the link to the office hours page. Yeah, so it's 1 hour a week, and everyone just comes in. So it's the most efficient. And actually, the office hours is really cool because talking about this whole theme here. The office hours I hold are nice because we have different people come in, and then oftentimes what happens is that people talk amongst themselves, and you're actually able to help each other out more than I can, right? Again, like these are the people, like so many times in office hours, you come in and you ask about something, and then someone else in office hours actually is able to help you out. I think that's awesome.
thank you.
Great. Anything else before we go? Alrighty, so good luck.